Right then, let's go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the 2-on-1 Powerchair Football Podcast powered by MK Battery. This is episode 43. It's great to be back, and today we're taking a step back to reflect on what has been a hugely significant year for Powerchair Football. Before we get underway, a big thank you, as always, to MK Battery. Their continued support plays a vital role empowering the sport at every level, from programs and participation to competition, visibility and coverage. And it also helps us share the stories, developments and milestones we talk about here on the podcast. My name is Ryan Sipple, and today I'm very happy to say joining me for the final podcast of the calendar year is my founding co-host Alex Dowding, and alongside him, Chair of the Wheelchair Football Association, Dean Williams. Two people who have been right at the heart of so much of the work and progress we'll be talking about today. How are you both, gents?
I'm very well, thanks. It's been a while since I've made it onto an ep for various reasons, but it's nice to be back.
It's good to have you back. Dean, how are you?
I'm very good, to always happy to be back. And Al, what a treat to have you back on here as well.
Thank you, Dean.
In today's episode, we're going to be looking back at some of the top highlights from 2025, the moments, the developments and milestones that really defined the year for Powerchair Football, both on and off the court. There's been so much progress across the sport over the past 12 months. And we want to take some time to reflect on what that has meant for the community, the competitions, and the direction we are heading in. Across the episode, I think we'll each choose 3 of our top personal standout highlights from the year, and we'll talk about their significance, why they mattered, the impact they had, and what they tell us about where the sport is right now. And in some cases, how they might shape what comes next. We'll also make space, inevitably, for a few honourable mentions along the way, because there's far more that deserves recognition that we could ever fit into just a single list. Before we get into all of that, though, it's important that we also take a moment to recognise those members of our community who are sadly no longer with us. 2025 has brought loss as well as progress, and we want to acknowledge the individuals who have left a lasting mark on the sport. So our thoughts are very much with the families, teammates and loved ones, and they will always remain part of the Powerchair Football family. Dean, it feels surreal almost. You and I sat down almost exactly a year ago today, it may even be to the day, to reflect on an incredible 2024. And it feels like we've blinked and we're back here again, looking back on another historic year for the sport. From your position as chair, when you look at 2025 as a whole, what's the biggest change you've noticed in the sport compared to where we were this time last year?
I mean, I found this very difficult this time last year, just going back and reflecting on 2024, Ryan. I think we probably did our top 5, didn't we, then? So I'm in some ways, this has become harder to then do a top 3 for 2025. I think it's been an awesome year with loads of growth. And don't forget, people hear me talk about this all the time, our responsibility at leadership trustee level is to think about 2 words, predominant words, to govern and grow the sport. And I think we've made progress on both of those areas, quite a significant progress, which I'm sure we'll get into in the content of this podcast. But I think when I allow myself to sit and reflect, and this time of year is a great time to do that, I'm actually quite proud of what we've achieved and what we're starting to build. But I'm equally excited about what next year looks like. So we'll also get into that. I'm sure there'll be space to do that. But I think we've laid significant foundations this year for the next stage of our growth. That's how I'd sum it up in a sentence. So there are things that we no doubt will talk about that are very significant going into next year, which enables us to do even greater things of higher value for our community and grow the sport even further. And that's what my role is as chairperson alongside the trustees, to make sure that we're constantly challenging ourselves to do that. And they don't just happen overnight, as we know. So that statement around the foundations that we've laid during 2025, outside and not ignoring the successes we've had along the way, reflect on the last 12 months, I think that really excites me going to next year. So very difficult to get it down to 3. I'm really pleased you said I can have some honourable mentions. The danger is there's about 20 of those, so I'll try and condense that as well.
No, I completely agree. And it does really feel like the work we've done in 24 and 25 is laying the foundations for an incredibly huge year in 2026. And everything we discuss in this episode will probably allude to that. Alex, you've probably been one of the busiest people behind the scenes this year, supporting, building, innovating, problem solving. If you had to sum up 2025 from your perspective in a sentence or two, how would you describe it?
Crikey. Does that do? Just on its own, just crikey. It's been relentless in terms of the work, but that's because once you set standards, which we've done over the last few years, we've increased our standards every year. Once you do that, then there's a set workload to keep them and maintain them. But then if you want to go above and beyond those, if you want to set new standards, if you want to develop new things, if you want to have new innovations and try new stuff, then you've got to find the space for that as well. So the workload has been high and been significant, but because of the progress we've made in certain areas, I think it's kept the momentum up and kept the motivation up. So in a sentence, I don't know, something probably a little bit cheesy, like driving higher, ever faster. So I don't know, but we've really done some cool stuff that people won't have seen yet, and the impact of what we've done won't be seen yet, because that's some of this stuff's a little bit longer term. But we've set the foundations, as Dean's already said, for some very cool stuff going forward.
It is so exciting. We have got so much to unpack from across the year. So let's get going. As mentioned briefly in the intro, we've each selected 3 of our top highlights from 2025. We will try as best possible to keep some sort of order chronologically, but overall, it's just been an incredible year. And to Dean's point, whittling it down to 3 has been nearly impossible. If you don't mind, gents, I'll kick us off. My first highlight of the year has to be everything connected to our partnership with Slater and Gordon. Because when you look back across 2025, it's hard to find many developments that have had a bigger, a more wide-ranging impact for the sport. So it all really started with that announcement back in January, probably January 7th or 9th, very early in the calendar year. We, as the WFA, were voted Slater and Gordon's Charity of the Year for 24-25. And I think it's really important to remind people just how big that achievement was in its own right. We weren't up against small like-for-like organisations or charities. We were competing with national charities, huge organisations with hundreds of staff, major infrastructures, established fundraising networks, the list goes on and on. Absolute heavy hitters in the charity space. And not only did we stand alongside them, we actually won the public vote, securing, I think, 20% of the total votes cast. And for me, we've discussed it so much, but it's so important to reminisce and remember that is such a powerful reflection of the strength of our community. Players, families, coaches, volunteers, partners, everyone rallied behind it. And it showed Powerchair football isn't just a sport people take part in. It's something that others truly believe in, and really want to champion, and to outperform organizations of that scale. That was a statement about where the sport now sits in terms of its identity, reach, credibility. And that was the first week in January. But what turned that moment from a great announcement into almost a game changer was everything that followed since. And that's why I wanted to highlight Slater and Gordon as one of my picks, because it wasn't just a singular statement, charity of the year. They've continually gone above and beyond to support us. So to reel off a few things, their support was central with the launch of the Benevolent Fund, including supporting Dean and Nick's Good Road to Derby Cycle Challenge, which I'm sure will be mentioned in this episode. Instrumental in that. Following that, they made significant strides to understand the sport, attend events, meet the community, above and beyond commitment, most definitely. Then we saw their back-in with the sponsorship of our end of season awards at the King Power Stadium, which turned out to be one of our biggest celebrations to date. Their partnership then evolved even further, stepping up to become the title sponsors of the 25-26 National League, including the Premiership and Championship. A move that's unquestionably raised the standards, increased the visibility, helped continue to professionalise the competition, the players, the clubs, the supporters. So when you step back and look at the full picture, Charity of the Year, fundraising, Benevolent Fund, major events, National League sponsorship, Slater and Gordon haven't just supported projects, they've played a huge role, one of the biggest, in shaping the direction of the sport over the past year. And that's why, for me, the partnership absolutely has to be one of my standout highlights.
It's an amazing choice, isn't it, to go straight away? And if we're doing this chronologically, which I can't guarantee we will be doing that, as you mentioned, Rye, was one of the most significant starts to a year you could ever give. But I completely agree. It's everything that's followed since and everything that's planned as we go into 2026 as well. So I would suggest that the giving aside, which of course, we have to recognize, and that's okay, that without people generously giving towards us, we're not able to lift and shift the things that we want to lift and shift. So we have to acknowledge that piece. But for me, there's two bits that I just want to focus on as well, alongside that wonderful first choice of you, Rye, which is the relationships that have developed with Slater and Gordon, with some of the staff, is incredible. I would, and I will mention this guy because it's where it all started from, Mike Dunleavy. I would actually suggest we are friends and we've got to know each other extremely well by doing it. I love it when that happens because it means that you're talking about things at a very different level. It's not a transactional level at all. And I love that. And since then, we've been working very closely with Dom at Slater and Gordon. It's just fantastic. I love the relationships that are developing. But as we're about to find out, and we've alluded to this on a few occasions, as we go through the second half of the season and go through 2026, they're going to add some significant value adds to us as well. So, whatever we want to call them, legal clinics, just a suite of things that our community can clock into and develop their awareness and put them in a more informed position that they're in right now, potentially, which I think's a lovely touch. So I always say this, when we look for partners, we're actually quite choosy. And that sounds a very interesting thing to say, but we are quite choosy because I'm very mindful that we have to deal with a level of expectation that comes with whatever they are partnering with us on. And it's my job to ensure that we don't break by doing that. So what you want is a partner that completely understands that and gets it, understands where we are in the ecosystem of football perhaps as well, and then is willing to help us build. In Slater and Gordon, amongst others, which I know we'll get onto as we look through some of our picks, they've been incredible in terms of doing that. And you can't ask for any more than that as someone that's leading a sport and has an ambition to grow it, you just want people like that right by your side. So what a brilliant first pick that is.
Yeah, I think they're the perfect cultural fit, and to your point with the wider partners, it is that cultural suitability that we look for as such an important element. Just before we move on from Slater and Gordon, to your point, Dean, a quick note for everyone listening: we will be hosting an introductory online session with them on Wednesday, the 14th of January, from 5:30 to 6:30 in the evening. It will be a chance for the community to meet the team at Slater and Gordon, understand more about who they are, and hear about the different ways they can support our players, clubs, volunteers. It'll be kind of a short presentation, 30 to 45 minutes, with time for questions at the end. And we hope to cover things like Slater and Gordon, their specialist areas of law, holistic approach to client care, the wider charity partnership work. So we would love as many people as possible to join us for that session. Full details will be sent out to club secretaries and shared across social media as we approach the new year. So no, really important. And yeah, I'm looking forward to extending and enhancing our partnership in 2026, because it's, whilst we were the charity partner for 24-25, and they're currently going through the process of looking for their 25-26 charity partner, the work that we've done so far, the relationships we've established, means this relationship will far surpass the years 24-25. So that's my first highlight. Dean, let's come to you next. When you look back across the year, what stands out to you as one of the big highlight moments?
Alluded to already, Ryan, but this is a very difficult thing to do. But I'm very happy with this pick. That mine are in no particular ranking order or anything like that. But the pick I'm going to have is the setup of the launch of the Benevolent Fund. And the significance of that is the first thing I want to talk about. And then I want to talk about some people that deserve, absolutely rightly, some incredible mentions for the work they've done alongside that as well. So let's just go back and think about the concept of the Benevolent Fund first of all. So the Benevolent Fund is set up to help us sustain the sport of Powerchair football in England for years to come. That's what it's about. It's nothing other than that. So it's about dealing with things like hardship, when clubs experience those kind of situations. And at this stage at the moment, and it's been very well communicated, I think we're in the build stage of this. So what we're trying to do is to bring in a level of funding which gives us the opportunity to talk about how do we invest that funding, what's our risk profile in terms of investing that, and building it to a stage where we can start to receive applications from clubs should the need arise. So we are absolutely deliberately and very purposely and very specifically in that build stage to get that fund to a certain size. We've made a tremendous start. Our first year ambition in terms of the fund, we've actually achieved 500% of the target that we wanted to do. And you've already mentioned that Slater and Gordon were significant in terms of the help and support they've given and the giving they've put into that fund, which is amazing. But there are lots of other people that have done very similar things as well that I just want to acknowledge as we go through this. So that build stage is critical. It's really important. And I think that build stage continues for possibly a couple of seasons, 3 seasons maybe. And it will make sense to people, I hope, as to why we're going to that phase. Alongside that, we're laying the foundations of it, which ultimately means that we're setting rules. We're setting a set of criteria. We are going to be setting up a panel who decides in terms of, once receiving applications, what is accepted, what is not accepted, and giving people clear feedback on that stuff. So all of that will become very clear. That's the detailed stuff. But I'm delighted that we have something that specifically is ring-fenced and addresses the sustainability of the sport, because nobody wants this sport to go anywhere, right? We want it to go up. We want it to get even better, even stronger, alluding to the cheesy comment you called it a little bit earlier on right at the start, Al, but that's what we all want to happen. So I'm really pleased that we did it. The thing that makes me really excited, funny enough, is the bit where people have taken to it and they've just gone into it. So that's where my mentions start in terms of who has already made a significant impact to that. So people will think that the start of that fund was Nick and I, as Nick would call it, doing a little cycle ride across 2 days, circa 200 miles before we got to Derby Arena with the John Good Group WFA Cup finals day. It wasn't the first kickoff that we had of the Benevolent Fund. Actually, that accolade goes to Matthew, one of our trustees, Matthew Stevens. He did his coast-to-coast walk, which I think was, again, what's that, circa 200 miles, again, walking across one end to the other end. Absolutely amazing thing for Matthew to selflessly do, and the money he raised was incredible to go into it. That was actually the kickoff of it. But the fact that Nick and I cycled into Derby Arena just before he finished, I think that's right, isn't it? That's by the by. What Matthew took on was an extraordinary feat. To be very motivated and physically to go and do what he did was incredible. So Matthew absolutely has the honour of kickstarting that Benevolent Fund. Nick and I did our cycle. There were certain things that I'll always remember about that. There are certain things I want to forget, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to forget. I'm still with some difficulty in certain areas of my body, but I love the fact that I really challenged myself, and that's probably the toughest thing and the most physical thing that I've ever had to do myself. For Nick, of course, I'll go back to it, and Nick knows I'm kind of partly joking with this. For Nick, it was a warm-up, and we'll get on to his next big ride in a few moments' time. One of the things I always remember was cycling into Derby Arena on finals day, having finished it. And it's the community, isn't it? We're back to that. You know, why do we do these things? Well, we do it for the community. That's what we do it for. But to get the reception that Nick and I got when we came in, that's one of those moments that I'll never forget. And again, while on the subject of mentioning people that really aided that, Ryan, you weren't actually physically with me pedal by pedal, but you kind of were, weren't you? Because you were picking up from a social media perspective, but also looking after my good lady wife, but also making sure that we had the right fluids and intake at certain points, pushing us along, give us that encouragement. You know, that means an awful lot when you do something like that as well. So that's enough said about my little contribution to that. But then we go on to Nick. Rather insane, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but wasn't that 4,500 miles over 50 odd days, 55 days, something like that? I mean, the man's a machine to be able to do anything like that. And I had the pleasure of spending 2 days with him. I definitely wouldn't have signed up for that one. But again, significantly, what he did to raise the profile of the Benevolent Fund and the WFA as a whole, amazing. And Powerchair Football in England, loved what Nick did. He's just a superstar. He is supported in so many ways for years and years and years, but to do something that's a massive interest of his in terms of the cycle and combine the two things, I love the fact that we're able to do that for Nick. He's a very highly motivated guy, as we all know. Then I want to mention Kath Gobsborough, one of my other trustees that turned 50. I don't know if she'll thank me for that or not, but she did post it all over socials. And Kath selflessly donated, I don't want any gifts for my 50th. The gift I want is for people to give back to the sport that I love, that has given me so much in my life. What a statement that is. And then to see people donating to the fund via CAF to then give to the Benevolent Fund, absolutely outstanding. And that's a huge thank you to CAF. I'm sure I've said that on a number of occasions. And then latterly, we've had Rosie and Charlie Hodgson, who have also been doing some bespoke design of the controllers. And I think they look absolutely amazing, first and foremost. But out of the blue, to just get a note from Rosie a few weeks ago, just to say that, how do I give to the Benevolent Fund? Because, you know, some of the profit that we've made on this, we want to give that back to the sport. Again, the same sentiment as CAF, the sport that's given me so much. And, you know, the work that Charlie and Rosie are doing around that, just fantastic. I've also had lots of people come to me independently and saying, what can I do? I'll answer that question on this podcast. You can do anything you want to do to raise money for the Benevolent Fund, if that's what you want to do. The promise from me as the chairperson, alongside my trustees, is this is completely ring-fenced. It is all down to safeguarding and sustaining the sport of Powerchair football. So again, quite a long answer from me, right? You're used to this because you have me on it a few times, don't you? But I feel like I couldn't have said anything. I couldn't have not said anything I've just said. The significance of the fund is the bit that really excited me, that we had a vision for it, and we decided to implement that, and we've managed to achieve that 500% of our first year's target. That's amazing. The bit that really motivates me is not the bit where one person does what they do, it's how it captures people's imagination. And that's the bit that's really important to us. And, you know, we were lucky enough to get a gift and a donation from another charity, which ultimately we were able to package as part of, if we were lucky enough to receive funds, as part of our long-term ambition for Powerchair Football in England, we have a ring-fence fund, benevolent fund, and that got some attraction and some money gifted towards it. I love that. So I'm really excited for what this means for Powerchair Football in England, because it's already accumulated to a really nice level, but I'll say it again, we're in that build stage. But what a significant thing to get off the ground last year.
Just also to mention, anyone who does want to take part in any fundraising activities, we've got a number of online tools for sponsorship, support, etc. So if that's something you're looking at and it's a bit of a barrier, get in contact with us and we can set you all up to do all that stuff nice and easily.
Lovely stuff. Thank you, Ram.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly important element of 2025 to reflect on. Hearing you talk through the reasons behind the fund, the work that went into making it a reality, shows how valuable it is. And even though people may not see that direct support for a few seasons, for a little while, just knowing it exists gives the whole community kind of a sense of reassurance, I think. And that's been matched by the monumental efforts you've just gone on to describe. People who have already raised so much money from challenges, personal fundraisers, long distance rides, club-led initiatives. The commitment people have shown to get this off the ground has been incredible. So to echo Alex, to echo Dean, anyone thinking about taking on a challenge or organising a fundraising to help continue strengthening the benevolent fund, please do get in touch. We'd love to support and encourage anyone who wants to be a part of that journey. Another one to mention is the Gold Line pin badges. I don't want to put you on the spot, Dean, but could you predict or guess how many we've sold just coming to the conclusion of 25? It's been an incredible amount, I know that much.
Yeah, it has. I'm someone like Lee as treasurer would have the figures more accurately, but I look in my cupboard sometimes and I do look at it and think, there's not a great deal left. There are some left, but there's not a great deal left. So you're absolutely right to acknowledge that, Ryan. Sorry, that's bad of me, actually, because that is something that the countless members of the community, families, carers, players themselves, clubs, sponsors of clubs that have come to us and asked for those pin badges, every time someone's doing that £5 directly is clear money that goes into the benevolent fund. So actually, you're absolutely right to acknowledge that, because ultimately that every £5 that goes in from a member of the community, and some have brought so many badges, I don't know if it's because they keep losing them or people keep nudging them saying, that pin badge, that gold plated one, that's amazing, which I sincerely hope is the case. So no, that's been a huge contributor to it as well. They all add up. All these £5, they add up. They really do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it really hit home to me when I attended the Club World Cup in Paris back in June, and also the EPFA Nations Cup back in September. And we have people from across the continent, across the world, saying, do you have any pin badges? So it shows how wide reaching that initiative has been. The fact that people beyond our community here in England want to support and want a piece of WFA memorabilia. So no, bigger and better things to come in 2026 regarding the benevolent fund. And again, please consider kickstarting a fundraiser, because the impact that this will have in the long term, we hope, will be incredibly valuable. Alex, let's bring you in for the first time. When you look back over 2025, what stands out to you as your first big highlight, or one of your big highlights?
So I felt I had to pick a sporting one. I felt I had to pick a football one, and I've gone for Teesside's Premiership win. Number of reasons for that. Firstly, there's quite a few people involved in the club that I've worked with for a number of years and got on really well with, and so it was great to see such joy and the tension and the release and the expression of emotion once they won as well. You could see how much it meant to everyone, how much they put in. But also in the context of the WFA's history and the history of the National League, the achievement of a different club to win the Premiership title a club that's not won it before, was becoming quite a big hurdle to get over. It's quite a thing that, we've got a long history of 3 clubs dominating. There are other clubs, but 3 clubs dominating in terms of West Brom, Aspire, and our now sadly defunct Northern Thunder. So those 3 teams, certainly since I've been involved, have been the ones that you would go, well, one of those is going to win the Premiership. So not only is it an incredible achievement at all to win our Premiership, because the standard of football is so high, the level of play, the quality of the coaching, the quality of the players throughout the league is really, really high. So just to win the league alone is quite a thing. But the psychological hurdle of going, we've got to be better than West Brom and Aspire, is huge. And I think now they've done it, I think other teams will be more open to the idea and be able to see that much more easily. But they've led the way there. That's a big thing to achieve. And they did it with a blend of youth and developing young players, but also bringing in experienced players as well. Mitch Tinkler, a phenomenal goal scoring machine. Tyler Reeve, got himself into the England squad now throughout this year and established himself in there well as a homegrown player and done really well. So along with Ed Common and Greg Baxter, who they brought in and joined the team. So there's a real sense of they've done it themselves. They've not just signed 4 good players and tried to take on the league. They've built a team around their young players, blended with some experience, and just an incredible football achievement, really. And I loved the outpouring of emotion when they won and how much it meant to everyone. The families all joining on the pitch and the hugs and the tears. So many people had invested in that achievement, emotionally, physically, time, energy, thinking, thought, all of that goes into winning that league. So for our sport, I think it's incredible that our league now has reigning champions that never been champions before. And I think that's a really important step in the development of the football here in England. The standards got better and better and better. Let's not think that West Brom and Aspire have dropped levels. They haven't. Teesside have upped their levels and overtaken them. And there's a couple of other sides that are looking very close to starting to match that sort of level as well now. So the fact we've now got 4 or 5 teams in the mix for a Premiership title, I think that's partly down to Teesside's efforts last season to go and say, well, it's open to anyone. So it's making for really exciting football and just really well done to Teesside.
What a brilliant first pick from you out. It is actually one of my honourable mentions, which almost doesn't do it justice, does it? Because how you've explained that, I think, is perfect. The word I'd add to that is belief. So what it's given other people is belief. And, I think Aspire and Westbridge Albion would be the first to acknowledge that this is really, really good for our domestic game, but it's actually really, really good for our international elite game as well. And I think they would say that, when you look at seasoned, absolute prolific serial trophy winners like John Balding, Chris Gordon, just to name just 2 of them, the reality is I think they would acknowledge that. But the belief bit I think is really important. And at our level, in terms of not have any connection to any club or anything like that, just running, governing, growing the sport, it's brilliant for us, isn't it, to see people with following that kind of belief and then thinking, oh, maybe it's possible. And I do agree. I think the achievement of Teesside last season in what was the Optegra Premiership then, I think that's significant towards that belief for other people. So we can feel it, can't we? We can see it, we can feel it. It's carried into this season already. We can see those kind of things developing. So no, I think it's a brilliant pick.
I think we should further unpack it because they didn't just win the league. They did it in the most dramatic, convincing way possible on that final weekend, going head to head with the 2 other title challengers you've mentioned in Aspire and West Brom, beating them both on the same day. that takes unbelievable mentality, belief, to your point, Dean. And they handled the pressure so well. And if you look at the run that got them there, 12-game winning streak to the conclusion of the season, 19 matches unbeaten. I think they lost in game week 1 of the 24-25, then Optegra Premiership. Beyond that point, they were fairly faultless. That isn't luck. That's a team playing at incredibly high level over a long period. I'm going to re-emphasize some of Alex's points. You can't mention that campaign without talking about the influence of some of the players. Ed Common was absolutely sensational. Picked up pretty much every award possible at our end of season awards. Mitch Tinkler, Young Player of the Season, both of them were massive figures in that side. But it wasn't just about the individuals. It felt like a complete unit, a team. They still feel like that in 25-26. The belief around the squad is amazing to be around. And I think the biggest compliment you can give them is you had other top-level competitors, players who desperately wanted to win that title themselves, essentially just applauding Teesside at the season's conclusion, because there weren't any questions about whether they had justified that success. And that tells you everything about the respect they earned. And just to add to that, I think it's important we shine a light on Teesside Steel as well, because their journey almost sits alongside the Premiership success and shows the strength of the club as a whole. And while Teesside PFC were competing and ultimately winning at the very top end of the Premiership, Teesside still were one of the standout stories in the Championship last season. They've continued that momentum into this year. And by game week 2 of the 25-26 Championship, they've extended the longest unbeaten run in the country to 26 games, which is an incredible achievement in its own right. And you can see how closely connected those two squads are. I know sometimes they train together, and there's a real shared culture that runs through the clubs. And no doubt the Teesside Steer will be desperately wanting to join their sister club in the top flight. So that's Teesside Steel. I just want to also congratulate Muscle Warriors, who were absolutely sensational in the 24-25 Championship, exceeding pretty much everyone's expectations to go on and lift the Championship crown in one of the tightest battles we've seen in recent years alongside GBG Knights. So I just want to congratulate them as well. So that is the first of our 3 highlights. We had Slater and Gordon, we had the launch of the Benevolent Fund, and the success of Teesside in the Premiership. I will now kick us off once again and talk about my second. So another one of my top highlights from 2025 has been the continued progress we've made around our commentary and streaming coverage. And it feels like this has settled into something so consistent, reliable, and valuable for the sport. And it's developed alongside the rising standards of football we're seeing on the court that Alex has already spoken about. The level of play last season, and the start of this for that matter, has been outstanding. Tactically, technically, in terms of intensity. And it's been great to see the coverage that we now offer reflect that. National League weekends, I don't think it's unfair to say, are so much more accessible to people who can't be there in person, which is so important. And that element extends beyond England. We have people tuning in from across the continent, across the planet, wanting to replicate what we do here in England. A big marker for that is so far in the 25-26 season, we've had 100% commentary coverage across all 108 National League fixtures in the Premiership and Championship. Every single game has had a voice on it, every goal, every key moment. And that is such a huge step forward compared to where we was even a couple of years ago. So I think it's such an important element of our work. What has really stood out to me is the commitment from players and people across our community. We have individuals now travelling specifically to Nottingham, to Derby, to St George's Park to help support the coverage and be part of the production team, even on weekends when they're not playing or contributing. And that says a lot about how important now people now see this work. And I know we'll probably go on to this, but that whole operation, all of those stats, all of that success has been strengthened by things like the WFA scoreline app and the innovations that have come with it. Live scores, data, graphics. It helps make the streams clearer, more engaging, more professional, and ties everything together. And I do want to give real credit to Alex, to Jack, and everyone involved behind the scenes, because the organisation, the setup, the problem solving, the sheer amount of time people put into making sure the coverage runs smoothly, it doesn't go unnoticed. And it's been a pleasure to be a part of that this year. And I think it's really important to say here that when players show the level of commitment, profession, and reliability in terms of commentary, it creates opportunities that go far beyond what we can offer just at the WFA. And I've been incredibly fortunate to work on some of the biggest competitions this sport has to offer. But because of the standards and the precedent we've built here in England, I've almost been able to share those opportunities with others. So I'm going to mention a few by name. Straight away, I think of Greg Baxter and the experience of us calling all 29 games of the EPFA Nations Cup together. An unbelievable week and experience. I then go to Charlie McClellan, who joined me in calling every single fixture of the FitFut Club World Cup in Paris. A achievement that even opened the door for us to move into the mainstream running game and commentate on Lincoln City versus West Bromwich Albion in a pre-season friendly. And even opportunities for players like David D, who were able to step up and call some of the biggest fixtures in the Jonga Group WFA Cup at Derby last year. So for me, that's what it's all about. Recognising people who go above and beyond, creating genuine pathways and showing that as the sport keeps moving forward, new opportunities will continue to open up. So Greg, Charlie, David and others, they're brilliant examples of what's possible when people invest that time, that effort, that energy, that passion for what they do. So I know I've kind of yapped on a bit, but in summary, I think this is an area of the sport that has taken huge strides in 2025. It's helped connect more people to the game. It's given players and clubs something they can look back on and learn from. And it's played a big role in showing just how strong the level of football is now across the National League, the cup competitions. And as always, if anyone listening would like to support what we're doing, whether that's helping the production team, Alex or Jack, contributing or shadowing on commentary, please do reach out, because we're always keen to welcome new people into what is a really committed and supportive team.
Another fantastic pick, right? You know my thoughts on this from the moment I came in. I said streaming and comms are going to be significantly important for lots of people involved in our sport, but even those that don't even know about our sport. That's how significant the whole comms and streaming piece is. Shout out to MK Battery, who for this season stepped right into that space to enable us to actually consistently keep on that streaming. And I'm sure Al will talk about this, to continue to innovate as well around some of the stuff that we're providing, which is brilliant. The call to action there, Ryan, which is making me smile, is that you've just said about anyone wants to get involved in commentary, then let us know. But let's be honest, they've got to be quick, because when that calendar comes out in ahead of a National League weekend, if you blink, you miss it, in terms of it's just rammed straight away, which I think is the bit that proves to me that ultimately people actually, we use the word motivation earlier on in the podcast, and they're so motivated to want to get involved and do it. These are always the acid test moments for me when I look from a leadership perspective, thinking, have we got people that we have to force to do it? Make sure we go behind the scenes and just keep pushing, or is it freely accepted that no, I want to be part of that? And it's the latter, which is absolutely fantastic to be in that position. And you also, this won't be widely known, but the commentary team and the group on the WhatsApp will know this. You've got a league table, haven't you? I think we can say that I'm safely in the relegation zone, so I must up my game for this year coming.
A couple of bits just from me to chuck in on the streaming. You mentioned that we've got a worldwide audience. We get 27% of our views from overseas. So 27% of our audience for the National League is from overseas. We've had, in the last 365 days today, we've had over 100,000 views of our YouTube live streams. And I will reveal our highest streamed live events later.
No, it's been fantastic, and to see how many people are chucking their name in the hats now, to your point, Dean, the competition for those very valuable spaces in terms of calling some of the National League games is incredibly fierce, but we base that on quality, on consistency, and it's a roster that continues to grow and develop. And again, beyond the call to action, as I mentioned, the players and the people that are committed, that show that passion, that quality, opportunities will arise that transcend what we are able to offer here. And I hope that the examples of Greg and Charlie speak volumes to what is possible when you show that commitment. And an extension off of streaming and commentary, on the point of MK Battery, I'll also chuck in this podcast as a quick honourable mention, because some of the amount of people that state an interest of wanting to support and attend podcasts has been incredible. And this is episode 25 of 2025, a nice fitting number. So it's a total we'll be looking to surpass in 2026. So if you want to contribute and you want to be a guest on the podcast, please reach out as well. So that was my second highlight. Dean, let's come back to you for your next one. Give me another highlight of your year.
So the highlight, I'm going to mention the company first of all. So the John Good Group, who, when I touched on earlier on under the words addressed to Slater and Gordon on your first pick, right? John Good Group are one of those partners that they're almost like a dream partner. They're an absolute delight. So I mentioned earlier on about when you find someone, because we're quite choosy, that understands where we are and what we're trying to do. So the ambition, the strategy that exists within the WFA in England, it's an absolute dream if you've got a partner that not only sits and listens to that, they want to become actively part of it. And that's exactly what we have in the John Good Group. So I mentioned a few names when we talked about Slater and Gordon in your pick right at the start of the podcast, but I will do exactly the same here as well. So I could mention lots of people. And at the end of my little piece on this, right, you probably want to jump in because I know you work very closely with these guys. But Adam Walsh, the CEO of the organization, I mean, flat out, the organization is a fantastic organization, the John Good Group. He probably won't thank me for saying this, but they're doing a remarkable job in terms of leading an organization, the culture that's just fantastic. I feel like we get the benefits of that in terms of we actually managed to get infected by some of the ways that they build their culture and they bring it into our game as well, which I'm eternally grateful for. But it's hard to know how I can do justice the relationship that we have and we've developed with those guys. And there is a reason for picking them. I won't just talk about how wonderful they are. We'll talk about significant achievements for last year, because that's the point of what we're doing in terms of this podcast. But if you don't know, John Good Group are the sponsors of the WFA Cup. They have been now for a couple of seasons, and again, when we get to the conclusion on the in early-ish part of May with our Derby Arena Finals Day, there'll be lots of stuff going on there which they have enabled us to build towards. So let's first of all go with what happened in 2025. Their studious approach and their link to our ambition for what we want to develop in terms of our headline domestic cup competition last year was just fantastic. Every single step of the way, and way before that Derby Finals Day, the reality was we were working with them, and particularly Rye, thank you Rye, working with them to develop something that was going to be an outstanding day. Al always takes a strong lead in that day and just pulls it off tremendously well. This time was actually quite difficult on reflection because you were away in New York right in the lead up to it. So I think you deprive yourself of an awful lot of sleep, Al, just in the lead up to the event. But we managed, the one thing we wanted to do was we wanted to bring the noise. People may remember that was the strap mine that we had. And actually what that meant was, let's try and achieve the record attendance for Powerchair Football in England. And we managed to achieve that. And that's an incredible thing, right? Think about how long we've been a sport over in England. And of course, things don't happen overnight, but to have an ambition to create a record in-person attendance at Derby Arena for Powerchair Football in England, absolutely phenomenal. Love that. That was brilliant. And to say those guys are instrumental in terms of being behind that is probably one of the biggest understatements that we could possibly kind of make. So that's 2025. Then they haven't stopped. So as we think about the tournament that we are currently running, the preliminary and first rounds have started to take shape on the 16th of January. We have the pleasure of bringing the Premiership teams into it as well, in the draw, again hosted by the John Good Group at their wonderful location across in Hull. But if we think about that, and this has already been communicated, the competition has changed and shifted this season. And that's because of the investment and the quality of the resource and the time and the ambition and the motivation that we've been fortunate enough to foster and nurture with our wonderful friends at the John Good Group. So ultimately, what we now have is we have two parts to the WFA Cup. We have the WFA Cup, as we kind of know it, but with an incredible new trophy that will be lifted for the first time by the winners of that at Derby Arena, not as previously has happened as part of the FA Disability Cup finals weekend. We also have the WFA Vase, John Good Group WFA Vase, which will be lifted on the same day as well, which again, if we think about what foundations have been laid through 2025, that's exactly what foundations have been laid for us and able to bring even more opportunity towards our community for people that exit the WFA Cup a little bit earlier. I love that. For those that have not seen the trophy, first, the new trophy that's been commissioned specifically by the John Good Group, it's A, where have you been? And B, get hold of it on our social feeds, because it is absolutely, it's a work of art. It's an incredible trophy, which I think, I'm bound to be a bit biased, is probably the most bespoke trophy that exists within Powerchair Football anywhere. It's incredible. It has a look and a feel and has been built with the community that we have that play Powerchair Football firmly within our sight in terms of what replicates our sport and also what is useful and helpful for our community. I love where we've landed with it. I cannot wait to, and Adam Walsh, the CEO, will find this as well, to actually award that trophy to the winners at Derby Arena. It's amazing to think about what's been achieved there. And again, how else could I say this? Full credit to the John Good Group for enabling that for us. It goes beyond that, doesn't it? We touch again on 2025. Look at the instrumental work that the John Good Group did around the Benevolent Fund. So my first pick, they were wrapped up in that. We started from their premises. The send-off they gave us, which was totally unexpected, and one of those moments where you think, oh my goodness me, this is a bit too much. I don't need to leave with emotion, was incredible. And then they were right there at the end as part of Derby's final day. They gifted towards the benevolent fund. They've just been absolutely wonderful and fantastic. I'd hate to think that we don't have them as predominant partners that we have going forward, because they're just absolutely wonderful. And I'll say it again, when you have people like this that are so wedded to the sport and have become fans of the sport, you don't want to lose them. So again, 2 more bits on this before you jump in, Brian, and now if you've got any words to say around them as well, I'm sure that'll be the case. I mentioned Adam Walsh, the CEO, but Rich and Phil, amongst others, have been also incredibly instrumental within that organization from so many ways. But actually, I'm going to perhaps do them a disservice from a marketing perspective in terms of growing that and enabling that to really look absolutely fantastic as our headline domestic competition. They have been superb. And I was actually touched. I sent Adam a note just before we had the Christmas break. And the note was to say, I'm a little bit touched by just listening to your executive podcast from the John Good Group on their reflections from the year. And right at the start of the podcast, Adam had asked the executives in that room, what is your highlight? Adam and Rich's highlight was both the same. It was the Derby finals day, hitting the record attendance, but also how they're enabling shape the future of our competition, WFA Cup and Vars. To hear them say that in an organisation that has incredible amount of highlights and charitable work that they do, I think is outstanding. And again, it's one of those things that I would use as an acid test to, again, not to assume anything, not to take for granted, but to ask myself the question, are we doing the right things? And clearly when you have 2 individuals at a senior level that are highlighting in that way, I think they would say the same thing about the relationship and how that's developing. So huge thank you to them. Has to be a highlight for, I think I've done that justice. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but actually there's so many reasons why they deserve to be an incredible highlight for 2025, and that will just continue.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the Vars. So
Yeah.
We've moved from having a single cup competition to effectively having 3 competitions from last season. And we've done it in a way that means that the whole pyramid of Powerchair football gets a chance to experience a final, a derby, their derby. Just the ability that we've managed, or the way we've constructed that, I think has been brilliant. And they've not wavered or flinched at anything we've suggested to develop that and move that forward. And it's just been brilliant, absolutely superb. Phil's a great guy, really talented, and has really got his teeth into the style and the branding that they've created for the Cup and the Vars, and we love it. And it's not something that's just been done quickly. A lot of thought and time and effort's gone into it, and you can only do that if they genuinely care and really want to make a difference. And so it just shines through everything that we do with them.
Yeah, I'm very glad that you've brought up the John Good Group, and I think if we was to each select our top 3 highlights from 2025 in isolation, they would, without question, feature on all 3 of ours top 3, because from a partnerships point of view, they genuinely are something quite special. I value every single sponsor that I work with, every partner that we have at the WFA, but the level of commitment, care, imagination that the John Good Group have shown over the past few seasons is on another level. What started out as a 1-season agreement back in 23-24 has grown into a partnership that has now extended through 2024-25 and now 25-26. And every single year, they've not just renewed, they've raised the bar. They've invested more, they've innovated more, they've dedicated an unprecedented amount of resource, time, energy into helping prop up the sport and push it forward. It's been completely selfless, it's been genuine, and it's gone way beyond what you'd normally expect from a commercial partnership. I don't think it's unfair to say.
No, definitely.
And as you mentioned, the work they've done around the WFA Cup has been unbelievable. They haven't just sponsored the competition, they've helped shape its identity now. That bespoke trophy is just incredible. The creative direction, Derby Arena, has become a really meaningful day in our calendar. This year is 2026 is going to feel even bigger, with the final now incorporated, the newly created VARs, and that concluding on the same day. To Alex's point, creating even more opportunities for players, club supporters to be part of something special. And you did say I would have an opportunity to talk about the individuals that help it get to that stage. And I do want to recognise a few individually, because none of this would happen without them. First, Adam Walsh, Chief Exec, one of the most driven, committed people I've ever worked with. He oversees this huge operation at Jonga Group, yet still finds the time, the energy, the passion to pour into this partnership. It's no exaggeration to say that a lot of what we've achieved together simply wouldn't have happened without him. Then there's Rich Quelch, Chief Marketing Officer, one of the best innovators, blue sky thinkers you'll ever meet. The reason this partnership keeps growing, evolving, expanding, and exciting people is largely down to his vision and creative leadership. He's absolutely relentless in the best way possible. And I'm so looking forward to working with him and his team again this year to make the competition and Derby something really special. And finally, Phil Postle, Head of Creative. Alex has already said it. An absolute genius. The design work, the visual identity, the bespoke trophy, the artwork, everything people look at and say, wow, that's Phil. He is the wizard who puts the magic on the cup, and what he produces never ceases to amaze me. And of course, beneath that, there's a whole wider team at Jonga Group who support, contribute, and put hours in behind the scenes. So, yes, so important to acknowledge the role they've played. And if you thought 23, 24 or 24, 25 were successful years for the Cup, 25, 26 will be an absolute game changer once we incorporate the VARs, and Derby now has the ability to host its own final. So, fantastic pick. Alex, let's bring you back in. What's your second highlight from 2025?
Well, we're coming up to pretty much 12 months of the WFA Scoreline app, which I think we might have just passed the 12 months. I think we had it in testing just before Christmas last year. I don't know where to start, really. I mean, I'm obviously heavily involved in our tech and what we do, and so I'm aware of what's possible, what's not possible. This should be impossible. What Jack Humphreys has done and built and made with the Scoreline app, it wouldn't normally be possible with one person. To do it as a voluntary contribution to the organisation that he's done as trustee is, I would say, unprecedented. We have a world-class app that does a number of very, very impressive things. For instance, notifications. People, I'm sure, who use the app will get match notifications. That's not an off-the-shelf ability, a not off-the-shelf function that you can plug in. There are off-the-shelf functions that you can plug in that do that, but they wouldn't work within our ecosystem. So Jack's written an entire notifications bit of code, bit of software that operates for us. That's a remarkable achievement. There's that. The other ones that are off the shelf would have been made by a team of coders. That's just one element of what we've done. The most remarkable element, or most remarkable bit about what we've done, is if you went to a commercial company and had this built, the running costs that it would be for the WFA would be probably certainly 5 figures. Maybe 4 if we got a really good deal per year. Running costs. I can tell you this, that Jack's app, because of the way he built it with the efficiency in mind and all of that, is currently cost us less than 4 figures in total to run for the year. That's incredible. That's just unreal. So I just want to stress how much of a technical achievement this is. This isn't just we've got a brilliant app. We've got a brilliant app that's been done in a way that's utterly remarkable. So I just want to really emphasize that bit. It's one of the most impressive bits of tech I've ever seen. So I will now leave that part of that, because then once you've got this really impressive bit of tech, what does it do for our sport? What does it do for our community? Now, I don't think there's many commentators that don't use it currently to check stats, to look at league tables, to look at goal scoring charts as they're commentating, enrich our commentary and broadcast stuff. The number of times you can walk around the hall, walk around the campus, walk into team rooms, and heads are buried in the app. Players are obsessed with the stats and reading what's going on, seeing what's happening. It's a gateway into our sport in terms of for the obsessives, the aficionados, and just for new people coming in to be able to really access what's happening. Tells the story really cleanly, really easily about what is going on in our National League. And that ability to do that is only because it's so quick, so slick, so well designed, and so uniquely placed within the world of Powerchair football to do that, because you're not going to be able to get that off the shelf from anybody else. That's not going to be something we can translate from the running game into our sport particularly easily, because of the nature of stats, because we have a 4-player game, not an 11-a-side or a 5-a-side or a 7, other formats of the game use. Because our games are different lengths, because we've got 2 12-division national leagues. There's a lot of stuff that you can't just translate across. So going bespoke is phenomenal. To do it at a price point that is quite frankly baffling, that managed to achieve that is just unreal. So the impact it's had is only outshone by the remarkable technical achievement that it is. And there's plenty more in the pipeline, if you want, for how that app's going to develop and what we can do with that. It's been built specifically to allow for, as we get to them, integration of regional leagues, so that regional league offer from the WFA can include utilization of their data into the Scoreline app. There's a few other bits and pieces we've got ideas for, but we'll leave those there. Testing is required, but we have some exciting opportunities as well. But in the ecosystem of para football and disability sport, and then the wider ecosystem of sports and national leagues, we've got a world-class, leading app there. That's quite an achievement for the size of organisation that we are and the size of the sport that we are. That our app's probably, I'll say probably because we don't want to offend anyone, probably in the top 5 national league apps for any sport out there in the UK.
There's no probably about it. I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about commentary. It really has become the most important tool that we have in the sport currently. The way it tracks games, leagues, tables, fixtures, stats, it's completely transformed how we operate. And I honestly don't know how we'd manage kind of a national league weekend without it anymore, certainly from a streaming commentary perspective. To your point, what excites me is this feels just like the start of the journey. I know about the developments, the innovations that are to come, and that's so exciting. When Dean and I sat down to recap 2024, it was one of the standout highlights then. But I think at the time we recorded that, it had only been out for a couple of weeks. complete infancy stage. Now we've had over a year of its widespread use and appreciation. It's so exciting to think about when we sit down to recap 2026 where it could be. It's been unbelievable in terms of breaking down stats, teams, players, and I probably used it for about 90% of these podcasts as well. Even today, referencing the likes of Teesside and Teesside Still, the first place that I look now is the Scoreline app. And we have to absolutely commend the efforts of yourself and Jack Humphreys. Jack is one of the most talented, forward-thinking people I've ever worked with. And the amount of time, skill, care he's put into building and refining this is extraordinary. So the sport is in a far better place because of the work that you've both done.
Just a few words from me on that as well. So I'm surrounded by brilliance, and that's genuinely the case. So Alex and Rye both literally hear me say that to them. I've never said it too much. They hear me say that consistently. Jack Humphreys, take a bow. So basically what you mentioned about Phil from John Good Group in terms of use the term wizard. I think the reality of that from my perspective is that, yeah, I'd put him in that category. So Jack knows that I refer to him in exactly the same way. What that app has added is tremendous colour to what we do in terms of comms as just one facet of it. So I personally, the bit that you started with, Al, where you talked about walking around the National League weekends and seeing people constantly engage with the app, I just love that. It's the kind of thing that I want to get Alex, our very regular photographer, to go and position herself behind people watching the app. And if she actually did that, the reality is would be inundated with photos because there's so many people, to your point, Al, that do exactly the same thing. It's an extraordinary piece of work. It's amazing right now. Our job is to keep building and innovating on that as well. Tremendously excited about where that will leave us in the future. Have no idea what on earth is being worked up on these things, because when Jack and Al talk to me about it, quite frankly, it's kind of lost on me. But in those wizards, I trust in terms of that next series of innovation. It's just tremendous piece of work. So Al, you're on screen. Thank you. Jack, I know you'll be clocking in whenever you clock in to listen to this. Take a bow. Fantastic work.
No, absolutely. So let's now progress on to each of our final highlights from 2025. I will finish things off and say that the England-USA St George's Park camp was one of my top moments, not just for what happened across the week, but more for what it represents about where the sport is in England right now and the direction we're heading. Now, I know this sits outside the direct involvement of the WFA, but I chose it because of its significance. It speaks volumes about the level of investment from the Football Association, the professionalism of the program, the pathway, and the fact that two of the world's leading nations in Powerchair football came together in what was in many ways a historic week for the sport is just something that has to be spoken about. I was incredibly fortunate alongside Dean and Alex to attend the camp. And from the very first day, it felt special. You had England preparing for the Nations Cup, the USA preparing for the America's Cup, and both programs using this camp as elite level preparation in a way we've never seen before. From a performance point of view, you couldn't have asked for a better environment. Anyone that's been to St George's Park know how magical it is, but know how it is that elite training centre, not just for the impairment specific teams, but the men's and the women's team as well. It is the absolute pinnacle. And they had a full week together, training blocks, tactical work, analysis, an opportunity to test yourself, not just against teammates, but another top tier international side. Those interactions between England and USA have only ever occurred in the World Cup. So the level of intensity and detail is exactly what international football and international exchange should look and feel like. The camp, of course, built into 2 international friendlies, and it was the second of those fixtures that really stood out as one of my top highlights. St George's Park was open up to spectators for only the second time in history that England have played an open friendly on home soil. I think the only other one I recall was back in 2022 against the Republic of Ireland. Every other match England have played has either been in a major tournament or a home nations event hosted elsewhere, so the significance should never be understated.
And I can reveal our highest watched live stream of the year was England versus USA friendly at St George's Park.
Yeah, I mean, that was an event, that was a stream, that was a fixture that was watched and appreciated across the globe. And that speaks to the unprecedented nature of this week. And it's why I wanted to talk about it. To be able to broadcast and produce that game, to help share it with that wider community, to feel that atmosphere inside the hall, it was something so special. Not to mention the performance, the standard of football that England produced, the sense of pride among family, supporters, younger players watching on. It was incredible. And looking beyond that, we know the Euros didn't unfold how we would have hoped. But I still feel incredibly optimistic about the future, because the long-term trajectory of the England programme, backed so well by the Football Association, it goes beyond any singular event or tournament. And it's more about what this week represents that excites me so much. Beyond England, another huge part of the week was the opportunity to spend real time with Team USA, speaking with their staff, their players, and understanding the chapter they're now entering as a program is fascinating. In many ways, they've used the England model to almost mirror onto their own, and they're now developing a really strong relationship with their respected national governing body, a clear commitment to professionalising the environment around the team over there, since they went under the umbrella of the extended national teams. And then later we had the opportunity to sit down with Tracy Mayer and latterly Nathan Mayer, hearing them both speak so positively about England, about St George's Park, about the standards being set here, and even saying a lot of what they're now building has been directly inspired by the work that's been done in this country. That's a huge compliment to every single person who has contributed to the England programme over the years. So for me, that camp felt historic, it felt progressive, and it felt like a glimpse of the level we should be aspiring to as the norm going forward.
And when you're talking about that felt like, I'd say that felt very elite, right? That's what that felt like. Absolutely elite, which will be where the England FA wants that to be. But again, you've alluded to this already, Ryan. This doesn't happen without the relationship and the backing we have of our friends at the FA. Absolutely outstanding what they constantly contribute. Classic examples of that are, we don't go to the Nations Cup without that level of support, commitment and funding that comes from the FA. It'll be exactly the same when it comes around for the 2026 World Cup, Fit for World Cup in Buenos Aires. Exactly the same thing. So, that's an opportunity for me to step into that space very briefly and just thank the countless people at the English Football Association that we partner with, and we partner with so well in terms of bringing that elite level to the game and the pathways that we have. Huge thanks to them.
And just an extension on that, I'll give a quick honourable mention. The FA Power Awards that we attended back in December, whereby the players of the England national team received their caps for the 2025 Home Nations and, of course, the 2025 EFA Nations Cup. The fact that players are being acknowledged was just incredible. It was an amazing celebration put on by Kath Gilby and the FA Para team, who I have the great pleasure working with on a regular basis. But again, every time you think of England, you think of the pathway, you think of things that extend from that. None of it would be possible without the FA, but they're not stopping there. They continue to innovate and recognise, and that's so important to acknowledge. Let's now progress onto your final pick, Dean.
So I'm going to use as my final pick. We did a bespoke podcast on this with Adam McAvoy towards the back end of this year, and that's the launch of the Sporting Excellence Programme. So again, in short terms, we'll just use a word, our first foray into apprenticeships. I'm extremely excited about the fact that was probably a year in the making, and we were able to launch it as the concept, because we're going live with it from January 2026, to actually put all the work into that, as I say, a year in the making, to get that to a point where we're ready to go going into 2026. I would say that's a hugely significant moment of 2025. So again, when we think about our rightly on his first pick was talking about the success of Teesside's Premiership trophy victory, I'm always kind of grappling with, in my world, we have to absolutely apportion the highlights from what's happening on the pitch, on the court. And then if you think about the world that I'm in with the trustees, it's enabling all of that to happen. But then there's all these things that happen behind the scenes that are significant. My pick's just being selfish for a moment. We've talked about the Benevolent Fund in terms of that future sustainability. I've talked about the growth and the restructure of the WFA Cup, the WFA Vars, but I think this is equally a significant moment that we landed last year. So the full podcast is out there, so I'll try and keep this relatively brief. But first of all, for the concept behind the Sporting Excellence Programme, what that brings, first and foremost, is opportunity for our community, for those that are eligible, for those that want to be part of that. And we'll do it in cohorts. And that's going to be the way that we deal with this. We want to embed the first cohort very, very well going into the early part of 2026. But that is absolutely significant in terms of opportunity it brings for our community. When we set our strategy, and we're now into the second season of that 3-season strategy, we were talking about a concept of more than just football. So what could we do outside of just playing the game? This is one of those huge things of significance that we're bringing towards our community. So the opportunity for the community is huge, but then it also enables us to think about our capacity and our capability to grow. More people able to give more time and do more things towards the Wheelchair Football Association in England. That is going to be of high importance based on the level of ambition that we have. So again, I use the words with the build stage with the Benevolent Fund and also laying the foundations. What we've already started to do on this is lay the foundations for the next stage of our evolution and growth as WFA in England in terms of where we're going next, following our next line of ambition. This is incredibly important in that we recognise that we have brilliance certainly surrounding me all over the place from lots of different angles, but we have to keep building that. We can't take it for granted. We have to keep building it and developing even more people moving into that space. The Sporting Excellence Programme gives us the opportunity to do that, and 2026 will be the start of that process. So again, without going into the detail we put on the podcast, which is the one with Adam McAvoy towards the back end of last year, cohort 1 will start to take shape from January 2026. So watch out for lots of information coming out very early next year around this. But I expect us to be in a position where we're already thinking about what cohort 2 starts to look like as we get towards the back end of next year. That's going to be significant for us as well. So this is not, if somebody's sitting there thinking, if I don't get into the first cohort, what happens? This is not, you're either in the first cohort, you're not. It's cohorts for a reason. We would already start to be thinking about the shape of cohort 2 as we move towards, as I've just stated, the back end, certainly by the back end of 2026. So there's two things going on here. The hard work that's gone into this to get the shape right, the restructure that we did, Ryan, as you know, around your role, your promotion into the National Development Manager's role, and then Adam taking the shape and the new role of Senior Development Manager. Those things were very big things to achieve in 2025, massive highlights, and I hope you'd feel the same about that. But they are readying us to attack 2026 from a completely different angle. And that's really, really exciting. So, yeah, for me, that's definitely going to be my third pick in terms of significant moments.
It's a fantastic one. Episode 41 of the podcast is where Dean, myself, and Adam sit down to really break that down, what it means, what it involves. But it's something in a nutshell that completely shifts the dial for our sport. I think Adam touched on it. It's a program that so closely mirrors what you'd see in Premier League or EFL academies. And what I like most about it is it doesn't just support players as athletes, it supports them as people. So it enhances confidence, independence, communication, learning. And for me, I've said it so many times, those life skills trump any sporting achievements, stuff that these individuals can take into the world of work or education is something that really needs to be spoken about. But yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say already we can predict that this will be one of the top highlights of 2026. Without question. I think you can look at ones like the quality of football, the scoreline app, but this, if it goes the way we want it to, and my God, are we putting a lot of resources into ensuring that this is a success, come the conclusion of the next calendar year, this will probably feature as the most prominent highlight, I would hope.
I'd be disappointed if that wasn't the case.
Mr. Dowding, let's now progress on to your final pick and highlight of 2025.
Well, my first pick was obviously a sporting one and a very public one of that with Teesside success. My last pick is an off-the-pitch pick and one that probably 3 or 4 of us have seen and know about. And it's probably also building on the back of the last two things. So we've got WFA Scoreline, that was my middle one, and we've just heard about the Sport and Excellence programme with apprenticeships. So this one's about the foundations that we've built this season, technology-wise, that are going to come to fruition next year. So I'll try not to be too boring, because I know that some of this will just, go over people's heads or they genuinely don't care. However, the Scoreline app was built off the back of a database that we built for streaming graphics. So that's where it all started. We built a database so we could record enough data to put stuff on screen, whether that's team lineups, goals being scored, league tables, etc. That database has expanded slightly. We've made it more robust. Well, I say slightly. We completely rebuilt it and redesigned it once we realised the scale of what we wanted to do wasn't going to fit that. So we've done that. No one noticed, which was good because it did break. And then we've also expanded it a bit more with some extra data and extra information that we've started to put in. We, at some point, we've been saying this for a little while, need to do something called Hydrate It, which is fill it up with all our old historical data going back as far as we've got. So all our league data, every goal scored, every match played for however many years it is, 20 odd years, which we've got a lot. And so that will make the database and the data source very complete. Once we've got that data source complete, we can do some cool things with it. So we can put like all the old leagues and stuff into Scoreline. So all the old seasons, we can do player profiles, so you can see your individual number of appearances. So take a player who's been playing from the start, say Nikki Baker, who's been around for a long, long time, and she'll be able to see all the games that she's played, all the goals that she scored, etc., etc., within an individual profile within Scoreline. Then there's a number of other things we can do. However, they all take quite a bit of time to build, and you've got to write bespoke code for all of those. And so Jack's built something called an API. Now, an API is a translation system, if you want, for all our data to be delivered quickly and easily with very short amount of code, a shorthand level of code, into any app and any website, any process, etc., that you can choose to use it for. So to get all the league goal score, getting the goal scores from a particular season for a particular club, it's a very short piece of code / the season / the club / the player's name, and that will deliver it back in the right format for use in various apps and programs, website league tables, etc. The really clever thing he's done with that is that we've got to make it publicly available. So you can ask for a access token, so that we make sure it's not just being rinsed by bots. You need to have an access token. But once you've got the access token, you can build your own apps. You can build your own website setups. You could, for instance, build an app that generates an automatic image of a player who's just scored a goal. Say they scored the goal, say which game it's in, and it posts automatically to your social media. Now, that might sound like a big technical challenge for some people, but we can also offer some guidance and some help in that direction to make it possible. But we're building tools that enable clubs, other organisations, to promote our sport and access the data for our sport to get it out there more widely. This is something the FA don't have. There's not many sports that do have this. Take another example. Say we've got a well-known score app other than Scoreline, just a generic score app. Let's call it Live Score or Sky Football or any other ones, big ones. Say we do get enough interest, enough traction from them to say they'd be happy to put Powerchair Football on their app. Well, we can deliver them via the API really quickly and easily all the data that they need, notifications for goals and updates, images for the badges, all of the things that they would need to add Powerchair Football to those apps is possible. Now, I'm not saying they will, and I'm not saying that they are interested or anything's been done on that front. However, until we've got the capability, we can't even go and have conversations. We can't even do that. And that's just one of the possibilities. It's not the reason we built it. It's a reason among many, many reasons that it's been built. But it opens up the data and the ability to promote the game in that live context, in that interesting storytelling fashion that the stats tell and that the results tell, and goal scorer charts say. The opens that up as a possibility for other organisations and indeed for us in other ways, in a way that is very quick and very accessible. So that's quite impressive. Other tech developments that we've started on this year, our AI ball tracking and game tracking is developing quite rapidly. So we looked around at various AI tools to track football, sport, other sports. None of them quite worked for us. So we set about building our own, as you do. And we've done pretty well. A little known fact about Nick Woodward is he studied AI at university back when computing power wasn't really fast enough to do AI, but the mathematics were there, the algorithms were there. So he's been a really valuable voice in our discussions and contributors as well. So thank you, Nick. So we've now got AI development happening. Now, we're still testing, we're still building stuff, but the result of the AI, WFAI stuff that hopefully we will get to will be automated camera panning and tracking. So we don't need camera operators if we want to have a moving panning camera. Potentially, we're going to be able to automate stats, passes, tackles. Now, possession's an interesting one. We've invented a new metric, which we haven't quite finalised a name for yet, but the one when the ball's in contact or being contested, will need to be a stat that isn't normally used in the running game and isn't used in many other versions of football. But for our specific version of football, we're going to need in contest, because who has possession of the ball when it's between two chairs? There's a question no one's ever asked before. So from a stats point of view, we've had to do a bit of thinking around that sort of thing as well. So we've got some interesting developments that will enrich streaming, will help inform coaching. Once we've built up the data that we've got to analyse the games, it will become a task for current coaches to dissect what that means. We're going to be producing stats and information that we've never had before, and we don't know if it's important, relevant, or meaningful yet. So there's going to be an interesting growth process for coaches to take on that data, interpret it, look at it, see what's important, get to know what they can learn from it, and see if there's any insights that can affect the game. So that's quite an exciting opportunity to see. We're going to, have an impact on coaching. And then there's a few other tech developments which we are very keen on and keen to get moving, but they are not certain they're going to happen. So we're going to tease those and say there's more to come, but they're not been announced yet, just because we want to make sure we're going down the right path before we get too excited.
I'm immediately going to respond, Al. We've just added you to the group of wizards, because that all sounds incredible. I made a comment a few moments ago saying I'd be lying if I said I understood all of that, but you certainly, to your point you made at the start of your pick there, you're not boring. Certainly, that's not boring at all. That's taking the shape of our game into a completely different dimension, which I absolutely love. What I specifically love about the API bit, I've got to be honest, is the value add it gives to clubs. So I've seen this quite a lot. It seems to be more prominent now. Lots of clubs now have got, it's not that they weren't doing this before, but there's been a lot of great innovation directly from clubs around working with their sponsors and what they're able to put across, and therefore the value that a sponsor or a partner gets back for them related to either the team itself or the players. I think this adds another dimension to that in terms of what they're able to do and therefore what they're able to attract. So I think that's a brilliant value add for the clubs. Super stuff. And I don't understand everything that you guys are working on, but the bits that you introduced me to, I commonly, as you know, just a little bit dumbstruck by how much quality there is that's coming through and where you're looking to take it. And it's a thank you from me to you, Jack, and others. Nick, you mentioned, I think rightly so as well, just for that constant innovation, which I just adore. I think that's a fantastic quality. Very grateful for that.
What stands out most for me is how so many of these ideas and innovations were dreams 12, 18 months ago, and how they're now starting to become reality. We're seeing things shift from the concepts and possibilities into tools and systems and approaches that are shaping how this sport is run day to day. And that approach in 2026 is something that excites me so much. And if the progress we've seen in 2025 is anything to go by, 2026 could really be one of, if not the most transformational year this sport has ever had on so many elements. And you can reference any one of our 9 picks to back that point up. So, gents, that concludes our official highlights of 2025. And I've got to say, when you look back at everything that's happened across the year, narrowing it down to 9 was no easy task. We have covered so much across our 3 selections. So in full, Slater and Gordon partnership, the launch of the Benevolent Fund, Teesside's Premiership success, but with the overarching theme of the quality of football continuing to rise, the continued growth of the commentary and the streaming coverage, the incredible support and innovation from the John Good Group, the impact of the WFA Scoreline app, the historic England-USA training camp, the launch of the Sporting Excellence Programme, and the exciting technology developments shaping the future of the sport. There has been so much progress, so many big moments on and off the court, and even with those 9, it still feels like we've only just scratched the surface. So I will open the floor to say that if you have any honourable mentions, please contribute now, a chance to recognise a few more people or projects and moments that absolutely deserve a spotlight, even if they didn't quite make the main list. I'll kick us off. There is so many. I'm sure we will repeat each other, so I've tried to be a little bit deliberate. There's something that's more kind of within my line of work. I want to mention the England pathway, the talent pathway, most notably the regional emergent talent programme, because we underwent a huge refresh in 2025, almost reshaping the programme across the 3 regions alongside Rob Seal from the FA. And that meant progressing some of the older players up or out of the system to create space for a new cohort of younger talent coming through. And we'll also be looking again early 2026 to make sure that the pathway continues to stretch, challenge, support the right players in the right way, while also extending the reach and opportunity even further. And when you see some of the players that are emerging at some of the age brackets, there's players that are going to be attending the FA RETP within the early stages of 2026 that are aged 8, 10, 11, and it gives so much confidence for me to see where the future of England is heading. There is so much potential in the group and it's being nurtured brilliantly. So I want to shout out the RETP coaches. Alex, you control the south, Dave Lewis in the Midlands, Paul Gorman in the north, because the outstanding work they're doing is ensuring that this programme continues to thrive.
And although I could go on with so many honourable mentions, I'm going to limit it to one, Rye, which is similar to what you've just said, but it's a shout out to the work that goes on within the regional leagues. Because you will have these stats, I'm sure. I'm going to put you under a lot of pressure now, but we have seen, it's something we probably did allude to when we were doing the 2024 review, but the quality of some of the athletes that we have coming from regional league format, playing the game for not that long a period at all, the quality of coaching to get them ready and transitioning into the National League, and then seeing some of those performances, people scoring their first goals, multiple assists, just almost like looking as if, even though it's been a very short period of time to play at that elite level of our National League, they've just transitioned into it so seamlessly. And we have to acknowledge, therefore, that the work that we won't always see that's going on within those regional leagues is phenomenal to get people transitioning to that elite level that quickly. So I wanted to recognise that as an honourable mention, because I think that's now become incredibly prominent within our game.
Phenomenal acknowledgement there, Dean. I think that's a really important bit. Well, I'm going to limit myself to one honourable mention as well, but it's quite a personal one. So it's for an individual who I've seen grown as a young man and develop into an incredible ambassador for the game, a brilliant human being, and that's Chris King. Now, Chris has had a few bits of adversity throughout his football career, but he's always battled through them. And this year, he started up his own Powerchair Football Club to give other players the opportunity to do so. They're growing. They're just in the regional league at the moment. So Jurassic Chargers down at Weymouth, where he is down in Dorset. A brilliant young man, always looking to do the right thing, whether it's the easy thing or not, doesn't matter. Just wants to do the right thing for him and for the sport and for the people around him. He's a great guy, wicked sense of humour, and what he's achieved individually this year within the sport, I just wanted to mention him. I think it's one of the stories and one of the people that we do it all for.
It's an absolutely fantastic pick. I echo everything you said about Chris. One of the most remarkable people you will ever meet. So positive, so upbeat, and continuously looking to innovate and support. So, no, I completely agree. I think we should conclude it there, because the honourable mentions, as we've all said, could go on. We could talk about the end of season awards, the FA Disability Cup, individuals across the community that completely make us who we are. But that would be that this episode would go on for hours and hours. So
let's just say on that note, Ryan, let's just say surrounded by brilliance, back to that comment.
Absolutely. So that just about brings episode 43 to a close. I think it's only really when you sit down and look back across the year, you realise just how far the sport has come. The partnerships, the competitions, the coverage, the growth across clubs and leagues, and most importantly, the people who drive all of it. Players, coaches, volunteers, officials, family, supporters, every single one of you has played a part in making 2025 feel like such a landmark year for Powerchair football in England. So it's a huge thank you and a very happy new year. A massive thank you to MK Battery, of course. Their continued support continues to underpin so much what we do, from powering this podcast to helping us broadcast the National League and strengthen visibility across the sport. And thank you to everyone who's listened, supported, shared, volunteered, competed and contributed throughout the year. We appreciate it more than you know, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you into 2026. We'll be back very soon, no doubt, with another episode. Until then, have a very happy new year. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Ryan. Pleasure.